So I am here today with Dr. Doni Wilson. She is a powerhouse naturopathic doctor, professional midwife, clinical nutritionist, best-selling author of Master Your Stress, Reset Your Health. You know I love that one. And an internationally renowned speaker and thought leader in women's health. And for 25 years, she has been on the cutting edge of women's health care and developed a protocol to help women clear high-risk HPV, prevent cervical cancer, and transform their health. But she also has a strong history in stress recovery, creating the stress recovery protocol. She has overcome physical and emotional symptoms. And we're actually going to dive into a topic today that we should talk about more, that we don't, and that is narcissism. And specifically, how does narcissism affect your physical health? Because we all know that it can affect our emotional health, but how does that translate? And she has a beautiful story, a beautiful lesson on learning to protect herself, but having to recognize this through tragedy. I mean, through medical problems, personal problems, where this lesson kept being hit over the head for her. And she finally did something very special to uncover it and change her life. So we are going to dive into that, and I cannot wait for you to join us. So please welcome Dr. Doni Wilson. Hi, Dr. Doni.
Hi there, Tricia. How are you today?
Good. So good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see you too. This is fun.
This is fun. I mean, we're going to be talking about some pretty heavy stuff, though, today. So we're going to still have a little bit of fun. Maybe we can mix in some cats, some good cat stories. Doni is fabulous with cats. I was just sharing her my cat story. My poor Louie, who's like 18 years old now. But I want to talk about a topic that a lot of people, I think, want to talk about, but are almost afraid to talk about today. And then I'm sure we'll go so many other places because your experience as a woman, also as a healer, also in recovering from health challenges. I mean, we have so much to dive into, but I want to talk about narcissism.
Let's do it.
Yeah, because I do feel, and I've experienced so many of my friends who have gone through being with someone who's a narcissist, and from the outside looking in, I'm like, well, they should just leave them. Like, this is silly. You see what they're doing. But when you're in it, it's not so easy, and the impact that it has, and I know I don't have to tell you this, but the impact that it has on your emotional state and therefore also your physical state and your health is so much more than I think many people talk about. So if you're willing to get deep, I'm willing to jump in so that we can hopefully help some others who are dealing with narcissist, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a family member, whether it's a close friend, a child, whatnot, so they can figure out how to navigate it and still hold on to who they are.
Absolutely. I really want to be able to help people because it can be very insidious. It's like sometimes you don't realize you're dealing with a narcissist until you start going, why do I feel like this? Why do I feel uncomfortable, confused, in pain, emotional pain, physical pain, and you start to question yourself, and it could be that you're dealing with a narcissist in some way in your life.
Yeah. So how did you recognize you were with a narcissist in your life? Was it a physical symptom or was it the emotional connection?
It was something that I realized through time. Also, because I would talk about what was happening for me to different colleagues and to therapists, and they would say, this sounds like could be a narcissist. But sometimes other people can't quite tell. Like you said, people just say, well, just don't talk to that person anymore. Just walk away. Yeah. And the thing is, when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, there's these emotional hooks that happen. And so you get hooked in such a way that it's very hard to just walk away. And so I really want to acknowledge that, like, I can't tell you how many people told me to just leave.
Yeah.
And there were many times I tried to leave, many, many times over years I tried to leave. And yet it was very hard for me to leave. Now I'm out of the narcissistic relationship, and I talk about it as recovery from narcissism. which I think is a very important concept for people to realize that it's possible to recover from narcissistic abuse and,
Mm-hmm.
and exposure to a narcissist. And I also talk about it as being sober because a lot of times the experience of being in a relationship with a narcissist is like being addicted to a substance. I think it triggers some of the same addictive pathways in our nervous system. And so when you can extract yourself from that relationship with a narcissist, it literally feels like I'm now sober. I'm 3 years sober from dealing with a narcissist.
And this was a spouse or someone you were in a relationship with, correct?
Yes, I'm specifically right now thinking of it was a partnership. We were not married, but it was a
Okay.
partnership of
Yeah.
over 15 years. And at the same
Wow.
time, I had also dealt with narcissism earlier in my life. And this is very common.
That's what I wanted to ask was how you're with someone here, but did this go back to childhood? Like, were you dealing with this as a child? And I don't know if you're willing to share that, but that was my first question was, why were you attracted to somebody with that type of personality, even though they don't show it right away, always? Was that because you were seeking something maybe from when you were a child? And that's way deep. That was the first thing that went through my head is we develop these patterns in our brain, right? And our subconscious, as you know, starts to say, well, this is safe. This is where we should be. This is what makes me feel good. And then we start to make decisions that, almost give us a nervous system hit. Like you're talking about like an addiction. So how far back did this go?
It definitely was deep. I mean, that's the thing is it's so far into what we might consider subconscious. And even I think from early neurological patterning that becomes, as you're saying, it becomes familiar. We're so familiar with the feeling and the experience that we end up choosing it again. Even if we on a conscious logical level, we would never choose that. But on a subconscious level, we choose into it because it's so familiar. And yes, I was exposed to narcissism throughout my childhood. And so it was simply felt right to me, even though it wasn't when I look back at it, it would be like, well, how could it be healthy to be in a relationship? And this is what I would also, anyone listening who was wondering is, am I dealing with a narcissist? The things you would be looking for is if you're in and again, it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. It could be a work relationship or any other parent-child relationship. If you feel that the person's often criticizing you in a way and blaming you. So you might be having a situation where that comes up naturally as humans. We're going to have things that come up, right? But what happens is a person who has narcissistic traits or narcissistic personality disorder, they're going to tend to not take any accountability. They're going to tend to find a way to flip it on you. And you're sitting there going, wait a minute, how did this become my fault when it's something that you chose or your perception is not my fault? And we can see that now from this angle, but when you're in it, it gets very confusing because as women, especially, we're taught from a young age to want to please other people, to want to get approval from others, especially from a partner or a parent or an authority figure. We're taught to say, hey, maybe I did do something wrong that I could do differently. And to be compassionate of others, which are beautiful qualities. So this tends to happen to people who are more compassionate, even to people who are more educated. And you would think a lot of women say, how did this happen to me? I'm a caregiver, I'm educated. That's the kind of person it often happens to because of this willingness to be compassionate for this other person, but that other person doesn't reciprocate the compassion toward you.
Yeah, and I think it has a real impact on our identity as women because we start to develop this pattern of pleasing people, which many of us, including myself, were born into. That was kind of just how I was as a kid. I wanted to make everyone happy, and what they thought of me mattered more than what I thought of me. And when you go into a relationship like that and they keep telling you you're nothing or you feel like you're nothing, they might not even say it, but they make you feel that way, then we start to lose that identity with our soul and who we are. And that's when I start to find health challenges. I think you dealt with migraines and headaches
Yes.
So is that kind of how that came out physically for you, do you think, as you move forward? And I definitely want to talk about, and we're getting there, how you got into that subconscious, because I think this story is going to be phenomenal. But what were you
Yes.
experiencing? Because we knew we had this behavioral thing that most people would attribute just to relationship. It's the psychology, right? You see the psychologist for it, but they don't always translate that into pain or
Yeah.
physical problems. So how did that translate into physical problems for you? Was it the
Yes.
migraines?
I'm so glad you're asking because yes, that it definitely dealing with a narcissist creates emotional pain. So there's the anxiety, there's the depression,
Mhm.
there's the questioning of yourself, the loss of your own self-esteem and self-love. And yes, there's physical pain. And so for me, it was migraines, and also I would get severe neck pain. So what will
Mhm.
happen is literally this was going on for over 20 years. I would first wake up and I would feel this pain in my neck. And this is like
Yeah,
for a lot of people
literal pain in
migraines.
the neck.
Exactly, right? We go, oh, how come I didn't realize that? The pain in the neck. Oh my god. The pain in the neck starts and then goes over, and what would happen to me is I figured out later that it was affecting my vagus nerve, because I would
Mhm,
literally, what would happen is it would cause nausea and vomiting.
mhm.
So I would literally be on the bathroom floor and I'd be thinking, I need to be talking to my patients. And I'd be trying to talk to patients, but I was so nauseous. I would have to call my assistant and be like, please reschedule my patients. I can't talk. I'm going to be vomiting in the middle of my patient appointments. So I'm
And then
on.
you feel worse, right? Because now you're not pleasing the patient, right? And that's another hit to, "I'm not a good doctor because I can't be there for somebody." Sorry, just had to interject that because this is how it
Yes,
compounds, right?
it does. And I felt already like an imposter because I felt like
Mhm.
I'm supposed to be able to figure out why I have these migraines. Like, and so I didn't tell anyone. This is the other thing, Trisha, is same patterns, right? I didn't tell anyone that I was getting these vomiting migraines because I
Mhm.
felt embarrassed and I felt like I should be able to fix it. I also didn't tell anyone that I was dealing with a narcissist because everyone would just tell me to leave. And then I was like, so I was dealing with all of this in isolation. And I think this is something where this is the thing. Dealing with a narcissist is very isolating because we feel like we can't tell anyone, no one's going to understand. And dealing with migraines is isolating because again, people tend not to understand what is it like to be in
Yeah.
that kind of pain. And I was vomiting, which people don't like to hear about. So I was like, okay. So I was kind of like be in denial, like hopefully it doesn't happen again. But literally it was happening at least every 2 weeks. And by the time it would start, it would be like, I was thinking the other day, the analogy would be like when you go on a roller coaster and you just wish you could get off the roller coaster and you're like,
Never,
I,
never. I love roller coasters. I do, but I know what you mean. I get the metaphor, but I'm like, "No, give me more."
give me what you like, the loop de loops. Okay, so I used to like roller coasters too, but like you're locked in and you don't know when it's going to end, and it is just taking off. And I would literally just have to hold on for dear life with these
Mhm.
migraines because it could last 24, 48 hours of vomiting every 15 minutes to 30 minutes. And then it would take me at least a week or 10 days to recover. And then the next one would start. And so I would be on the bathroom floor saying, what is going on? How do I solve this? And I started connecting in the vagus nerve. Of course, the vagus nerve is our anti-stress system. And what I started realizing is the vagus nerve goes right through the neck.
Yeah,
Of course, it goes from the brain to the rest of our body.
right.
And the vagus nerve also manages our nausea vomiting signals.
Right. Well, yeah. I know. And you know what's so interesting? And I want to keep going on the story, but I wanted to point this out because you were making a very good point about how you feel alone and you don't tell anyone. You power through.
Yeah.
And I am an adrenal fatigue doctor. I have literally specialized in adrenal fatigue pretty much my entire career. And when my mom died, or when mom was dying, and when she died in 2016, I was so far in the throes of adrenal fatigue, and I'm sitting there treating people. for adrenal fatigue and not even wanting to speak up about how I felt. And I thought, you know what, if I just power through, it'll be okay because I'm not breaking down in front of my patients and I'm showing up to work every day. I must be managing my stress okay, or this is just what life is like. And you're right. I didn't want to tell anyone because that would have been embarrassing. My friends were coming to me saying, wow, Tricia, you look like crap, you
Mm.
know? And I'm like, oh, I'm fine. What are you talking about? Like and I think that tying into the vagus nerve running through the neck, what happens, especially as women, and I'm sure it happens in men as well, is that when we start to get that disconnect in our neck, right?
Yes.
We cut off our voice chakra. We
Yes.
stop talking. We stop
Exactly.
saying what we need. We start letting other people tell us who we are. And it seems like, to me, it seemed like it almost happened in an instance. I have no doubt that it was cumulative over the years, but it was like there was one day I woke up and it was like I didn't feel maybe that I was important enough to speak up about how I really felt. Or if I did, I felt like I was a whiner or a victim, or someone was going to say, whatever, Tricia, you have a great life, whatever, be quiet. You know what I mean? And I stopped talking. And it wasn't until years later, just recently, even in the last 2 years, till 8 some years later, where I opened my throat chakra back up and realized that I actually have a lot to say. But I think it's a great point. And I want people out there to listen when you're struggling with these types of symptoms, chronic migraines, extreme fatigue, whatever it may be, and you're just powering through your life and not speaking up in fear of being judged. You need to listen because nobody's judging you. You need to stand up for you, and that is how you heal. And I want to hear how you did that. So keep going. But I just
No,
had to
that's exactly.
get up on my soapbox and champion for the people out there that are feeling that way because it sucks. And we know what it feels like, and we're here to help you. So please listen. Okay, so you have
Yes, I mean, that's the thing is when people say to me, how did I solve the migraines? Because now I don't get migraines anymore. I don't get the vomiting episodes anymore. That's in my past. And when people ask me, I say multiple factors came together to solve the migraines. One of the keys that I always point out is I started talking. I just decided one day I'm in the middle of a migraine. I'm in the middle of the pain and the vomiting. And I'm like, enough already. I'm going to start talking about this. And I started talking with colleagues. And they didn't even really have anything to help me. But just somehow putting it out in the open, things started shifting. And the migraines started decreasing. And so absolutely what you're saying is right when sometimes it's the opposite of what we think. It's like we think we are supposed to be quiet about it. Well, if we start even now, pick a safe person to talk to about it, be gentle with yourself.
Talk to the dog if you have to, but talk.
Exactly.
Well, and the cat, just the vibration in the throat to calm the vagus nerve. So even singing, humming, laughing, anything that opens this up and allows you to feel good about it. And that is crushed when you're in a narcissistic environment because you're basically taught that your voice doesn't matter. And then when it starts to impact your health, it's more than the migraine. It's about reopening what's been squashed. And we often have to do that with pretty extreme measures. So or is extreme to the common, not extreme to us maybe, but extreme to common medicine. I know you have stories about psychedelics, using psychedelics to do that. I'm sure you have other things that you did as well. So when you started to realize this and said, I'm going to speak up, where did it go from there?
Well, and here, this is going to be really interesting to you. I love that you're bringing up the throat chakra because what ended up happening is the migraine started to decrease. But then as we often see as healers, it may present itself in a different way. And what happened within a few months and definitely within a year, I developed a growth on my neck.
Wow.
Literally.
Wow.
It started growing until it was like bigger than a tennis ball right here on my neck. And
like a benign growth, or was it the thyroid or lymph node? What was it?
It turned out it was benign, but we didn't know for many years. Now, this was in the middle of the COVID pandemic.
Oh, no.
And I was having to go through all these specialists, all these biopsies. And it turned out that this growth went from right here on my neck, which I couldn't ignore. This is
Right.
the interesting thing. It's not like it's somewhere that I could cover up and ignore. No, this is right on my neck. Everyone can see it. So now I can't be quiet anymore. I have to be like, yes, there is a growth on my neck. You're not. And so when I had to go through all this imaging, and it turned out that it went all behind my sternum. So now it's actually also my heart chakra. This is the heart chakra, right? So it's the heart chakra and the throat chakra.
So grief and communication and identity and loss and oh my gosh.
And love, self-love. And
Love.
I had developed an inflammatory, it was an inflammatory, encapsulated inflammation,
Wow.
which is what happens with adrenal distress.
Of course.
Our bodies create encapsulation of inflammation. This was not diagnosed by any other practitioner, Tricia. I went through, I can't even tell you, 30,
Yeah.
40 experts, biopsies, imaging.
Mhm.
They couldn't figure it out. They thought it was cancer. And I'm like, it's not cancer. I know it's not cancer. Can you please just, nobody knew what to do. Finally, I had it removed. I had but this is the thing. Often with surgery, we can remove the thing, but it doesn't fix what's underneath.
Nope. Never. I mean, you had to get to why it happened in the first place. And a lot of people, this is the point where people start, maybe not my audience, but people start to say, whoa, hold up. Like, you're getting too metaphysical here. What's going on? There are too many stories of this to not give it weight. There
Yeah.
are too many because people deal with this all the time and they take it out, surgery, and then something else happens, but it moves somewhere else. And they go, we don't understand why it moves somewhere else. Well, I do, because you took it out of here. So it said, I'm going to make myself more prominent. I'm going to jump up and say, yo, here I am.
You can't
You
ignore
better
me
start
now.
paying attention because I see a better life for you. Instead of looking at something like that and saying, oh, woe is me, my life is over, now I have XYZ condition, now I can't move forward. You have to learn, especially with stress and resilience, to turn that around and say, this is a sign that I'm actually destined for more. And if I don't take care of this, I'm not going to get there. So
Oh my
what
gosh.
do you do? So you had
And
this thing removed?
this is right when this is all going on. I was in the middle of writing this book, the Master Your Stress, Reset Your Health book. So I had already put in a book proposal and had a book deal to write the book, Master Your Stress, Reset Your Health. And I'm going through this process of realizing, oh my gosh, the stress in my life, the emotional stress of dealing with a narcissist was creating this growth in my body that I needed to figure out how to fix. And I had the surgery, but that I knew that wasn't going to fix everything. And so that's when I went to two really powerful tools.
Okay.
Now, one is meditation, which we had learned meditation back in naturopathic medical school. So I knew meditation, but I went to a Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation retreat, and I learned meditation at a way different level.
Yeah. It's totally different. Like, if any of you that say, I try meditation, it doesn't work, I often say, go follow Joe Dispenza, go to a retreat, learn how to do it for real, because it's not just about doing it in your conscious mind and doing it. You have to feel it. You have to live with what you're trying to accomplish. You have to live in your future self. And that's very different than just taking a few deep breaths and saying, and imagining something. There's so much more of a process to it. So talk about it.
So I did that, and I ended up then going to, at least 3 more of his retreats and started practicing meditation every day, multiple times a day, getting into like you're saying, it's shifting, learning how to shift your brain waves into a calm state. So now you're sending anti-stress signals through the vagus nerve again, and through your whole body and your nervous system. And also, as you're saying, getting into the place where we can create a different way of being, different patterning in our nervous system, different possibilities for ourselves and our life. And so I was doing this. And then I also, for years, I had been wondering about plant medicine and connecting with a friend of mine, Dr. Heather Paulson, as well. And Heather said to me, I finally found a shaman in Peru who you can trust. And
Mhm.
so I said, okay, sign me up. I'm going because I'm dealing with this and no other practitioner was solving it. And
That's
so
crazy. That takes a lot of guts, by the way. I mean, I
I,
interviewed Heather, Dr. Paulson on this show, and we talked about these retreats. And I said to her then, and I still say now, I still don't have the guts to be like, sign me up. I'm going to Peru. Like, like, that takes some serious, one,
yes.
desperation, right? In some respects, and two, just trust.
Well, the
So
thing
good for
was
you.
is that I was dealing with the growth on my body and we didn't know what was causing it and there was no treatment for it. And I was like dealing, and at that point I knew I was in the narcissistic relationship and I couldn't get out. I had gone to so many different therapists and psychoanalysts and you name it, and they couldn't solve it for me. I was literally going through episodes of depression. So I'm like,
Mhm.
I need other answers. I can't,
Yeah.
there has to be. And as a researcher into stress and trauma myself, I'm like,
Mhm.
there's got to be other ways. I want to, if meditation's helping me, maybe plant medicine can help me. And so I just said, sign me up. And I went straight to, that was my first experience with ayahuasca. I went straight to the Sacred Valley in Peru
Mhm.
and did what's called a 10-day dieta, which is where you spend 10 days in a group, like a group of maybe 30 people, and you do ceremonies with ayahuasca every other day. So 5
Okay.
ceremonies in 10 days.
How long does that effect last? Like, if you do a ceremony, how long are you impaired per se or open?
That's a good question. I mean, when you first take ayahuasca, it lasts, the sort of acute effects maybe last 5 or 6 hours.
Okay.
But I would say the benefits still are
Yeah.
helping me today. But what I would say is after my first ceremony with ayahuasca, I came out of that kind of 5 or 6 hour ceremony, and we are in a circle and we're sharing what was your experience, what are your insights from this first ceremony. And my insight was, this is the medicine I have been looking for. This
Okay.
is the medicine that was missing for me all along. I could tell immediately that ayahuasca would help with the migraines.
Mhm.
And lo and behold, there is quite a lot of research
Yeah.
on how ayahuasca helps with migraines. I could feel it because I could feel all my nerves just soften and just feel like they were healing. It is the only way I could say it. It was just like you can
Mhm.
just see and feel your nerves healing. And my experience subsequently of ayahuasca is that it is so profoundly healing to the vagus nerve.
Yeah.
So I could feel, oh my gosh, it's helping my vagus nerve heal, which I had already known that was something I needed. So it was like, even from the first experience of taking ayahuasca, I was like, wow, this is a medicine that I'm so glad now that I have as a tool. And to me, it's just as we're talking about how stress and trauma, like a toxic relationship, can affect us on an emotional level and a physical level. These plant medicines like ayahuasca
Mhm.
can also affect us on both a
Mhm.
emotional level and a physical level. So they can be emotionally healing as well as anti-inflammatory,
Mhm.
helping the vagus nerve, balancing hormones,
Mhm.
so it's helping in the whole body. And so since then, I've chosen to be in over 100 ceremonies of
Wow.
ayahuasca over the past 4 years, multiple times to visiting the Amazon jungle and spending
Mhm.
time there, in dietas with a shaman and using ayahuasca to heal, because I could see that at the first time I went to Peru, I was still in the relationship.
Yeah.
And what I saw was then subsequently over the next several months, I what I would say is I became more aware of myself. I became more connected with who am I? And it's a process of letting go of what no longer serves us.
Mhm.
Like I felt like I'm letting go what doesn't serve me and I'm reconnecting with who I am, what's my passion, what's my purpose. And the all I can say is as I did that, I be the narcissistic relationship just melted away because it no longer matched, it no longer fit me.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. And I know I've experienced a lot of that without doing the plant medicine as well, but just realigning with who I am. And a lot of my guests here on the show, same type of thing. And it's weird. And amazing how the world just aligns to you then when you return to who you are, to your authentic self, and do what serves you, not in a selfish way. Because I think we're raised to think, well, that's selfish. You can't just think about you. I was told that all the time when I was growing up. Like, don't be selfish, Tricia. Like, think about the other people in the room, you know? And it's like, because
Yes.
I was an only child, so I probably always thought about myself. But so I think we get trained to not do that, but it's really important. And I think it's also getting back to creativity. And I know you dance. Did you bring dancing back after this, or were you dancing before?
I had actually brought dancing before I went to plant medicine,
Mhm,
but numerous times when I'm in plant medicine ceremonies, it
mhm,
comes to me. Dance is really a medicine for me. I know
mhm.
for you as well.
Yeah,
And
for sure. Yeah.
it comes to me all the time like, wow, I have to be dancing. Like if I'm
Mhm,
not dancing, then my body, things are going to get stuck. Things are not going to
mhm.
be moving. I'm going to not be feeling well. So I've just learned, okay, dance has to be part of my daily or regular activities.
Well, and I think of people, and I have to throw my husband under the bus a little bit here because he doesn't dance. Never has. And as I've done some of this work and reconnected with myself, I'm like, I think you don't dance because you're worried what other people think. Because who would not want to dance? Like, who would not just want to let loose in everything they have in the music? If you don't care what you look like, you're free. And
Yes.
so I think for the people who say, well, I don't dance. Well, I don't do art. Well, I'm not good at that. Well, then you're worrying about what other people are saying because it really doesn't matter. But it is letting go of those expectations and allowing that side of your brain to be creative. So
Yeah.
over 100 ceremonies, that's nuts. That's crazy. So progressively, as you're doing each of these sessions each time, are you just finding more and more that's just
Mhm.
buried down in your brain that you're releasing? And how is that impacting your life now? Because you're out of this relationship.
Yeah. And this is the thing, is not everybody needs to be
No.
doing that many ceremonies. Most people might just do 5 ceremonies
Mhm,
or maybe,
mhm,
if you have a lot of trauma or addiction history, you might do a little bit more than that. But what happened is that as I got to the place where then the relationship went away, then felt like I wanted to make sure I recovered from it because I was very aware I don't want to repeat this pattern. I need to heal myself so that I
yeah,
don't attract the same thing again. And
right.
so I was then going through, and in fact, oh my gosh, one of the most powerful ayahuasca experiences I had was in the jungle, in the Amazon jungle, um, taking ayahuasca that we had made ourselves in the jungle. And what I saw is that I had that familiar experience we were talking about.
Mhm,
Was I could visualize it and feel it. It was like I had been living my life in a sticker bush. If you think about like a sticker bush, so it's poking you, but inconsistently, randomly, constantly
mhm,
poking you, and so you're in pain in various places, and it's
mhm,
that unpredictability and the pain and prickliness that was familiar to me. And so what I was able
mhm.
to do in the presence of this plant medicine is I was able to perceive that and then to be able to release it and say, I am letting myself out of the sticker bush. That is no longer normal or familiar to me. I can exist in this human body without being constantly poked. And that
Mhm,
was so transformative because and you never know when you're in the moment. You're like, I don't know what's going to come of this, but when I look back now years later,
mhm.
I can say, yeah, I now no longer anticipate that I'm going to be constantly poked and in pain. I can now be anticipating that I can experience love and connection and respect and all of those things that can happen for us as humans. It's just that if we never experienced that in our life before, it doesn't feel possible.
No, and we feel like the stress is always coming at us, but that's because we're attracting it.
Yeah.
And we're also responding to it as a
Yeah.
stressful event. I often use an example. You're walking in the woods, you see a bear, right? You start to freak out. Well, what if it didn't look like a bear to you? What if it looked like a cute little cub or a kitty cat? And you were like, oh, how cute. Or what if you said, okay, there's a bear that direction. I'm just going to calmly go this way
Yeah.
instead of walking into it. I mean, we do have choices.
Yeah.
throughout our day. And the chaos is always around us and it always wants to find us. That sticky bush, I hike here in Arizona, and those silly little cholla cactuses that pop off and hit you in the leg. Have you heard of those? You like
Yes.
walk by
Yes.
and, if you get like within a few inches, they'll pop off and hit you. There's always stuff that wants to come and hit you. So you have to be
Yes.
prepared, and you have to
It's
be
so true.
ready to adapt, and you have to be ready to look at it with perspective. And speaking of perspective, you've had, even recently since I've met you, so many different things that have come at you that literally, Doni, could knock people down. I
Yeah.
mean, and where you're just like, I don't even know. And I've witnessed you using your voice to ask for help, to ask for support. And here you are standing and seemingly okay and smiling. So I'm assuming a lot of this changed your perspective on the little things that would have used to take you down that now you've learned how to navigate. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It does. It's like the word I would use is like an expansion. Like you start to realize, like, and it's sometimes it's easy, people, you might hear someone say this, and it's something you really have to experience. But this sense of like an expansion where now you have a better sense of who you are and where your center point is, and things are going to happen, like you and I both know. It's not like we're going to be able to have zero stress, stress free.
Newsflash, it's not going anywhere.
It's not stress free is not a possibility. Humans are going to have stress. Some things that, of course, like even being a parent or being a child, we're going to have. It's not something we're going to not do. And also just stresses come up. Like, I mean, last week, my air conditioner, it just stops working. That's going to happen.
Didn't you lose your house for a while too?
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened last year is, I mean, through the time that I was dealing with the migraines and dealing with that toxic relationship, I wasn't taking care of my house. I was kind of procrastinating it and hoping it would be okay. But it was like, looking back, I'm like, I really wasn't taking care of my shelter. When we think of stresses as humans, what the top stress is, do we have enough food?
Shelter?
Do we have shelter?
Water.
And I all of a sudden, and this was actually, I have to be grateful to ayahuasca ceremonies, because in ceremony, I would get the insight, I need to do something about my home. I need to go figure out what's going on with my home. I need to fix it. I didn't know what was the problem, but I just knew I need to pay attention to it. And so I would come back from the Amazon and be like, something needs to change here. And so I kept trying to figure it out. And I had actually hired a contractor. And then when they went to demo my house, we found out what was the reason why I had been getting these insights was that literally the ceiling and the roof were about to cave in. It was like when they went to demo, the whole ceiling fell on the guys that were demoing. And then once the ceiling fell down, they looked at the roof and they're like, oh my gosh, the walls are leaning out 5 inches. And this roof could have fallen on me and my daughter at any moment.
Yeah.
I'm just so lucky that it didn't. And then we were like, okay, now we know we're going to have to do something to repair this roof. And literally within a week, the house caught on fire. Turned out the electrical wiring was faulty this is over 100-year-old house, and the wiring was from over 100 years ago. And a electrical outlet that wasn't connected to the breaker corroded and caught on fire. Luckily, I was here at the time because I was going through boxes that had fallen from the attic. And I was going through boxes and I'm like, I think I smell smoke. And luckily, I called the fire department and only part of that section of the house burned, because at that point, I had nowhere to live. My house had been demoed. My roof was caving in and my house caught on fire and I had nowhere to live.
I remember. And you spoke up.
What do I do now?
You spoke up and you asked for help from your community. And I remember that. And, that can take most people down.
Yeah.
I think there's a lesson in number one, like you had said, we need to take care of our shelter, our food, our water.
Yes.
But I've talked to a lot of people who have gone through fires or gone through something happening where they've lost a lot of memorabilia and stuff. And they always come back and say, you know what, it's just stuff at the end of the day. The most important thing is that I'm alive. I'm able to feed
Yes.
myself. I'm able to, so it's like sometimes I think the world and your world was definitely saying, get out of that house right now. It's going to fall down. But I think it also gives us those lessons so that we can have so much more appreciation
Yes.
for the little things and the
What's important.
relationships and putting ourselves, with people that we want to be with, not with other people. And
Yes.
so are you still in the same house now?
Well, now I'm standing back in that house, but it's been rebuilt. It took a year
Mm-hmm.
to rebuild, to restabilize the roof, redo all the wiring,
Good
redo
for
the
you. I
whole.
think I would have bailed on the house. I think I would have been like, this is a sign. I'm out. I'll go find a new home. But you wanted to save this home. Does it have a specific meaning to you?
Well, also I felt like I have a mortgage on this house. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, you kind of, it's kind of like, okay, I need to do something in order
Yeah.
to because of the investment in the building. And so yeah, I just was like, okay, to me, I'm just going to rebuild it because this is the property. This is the,
Mhm.
I want to be able to restore it.
Well, you
And so,
restored you, so you should
yeah,
restore the home you're in,
there you
right?
go. And so then you start to realize, yeah, like, oh my gosh, I become the caretaker of this property, of this space. And it, like you said, it allows you to let go with what no longer serves you. When you have to, I had to quickly move anything out of the house that I mean, so it didn't burn, but I had to quickly go, where am I going to put all my stuff? And I ended up being able to really release a lot of things that I no longer need. When we live in a house, I had been living in this house for over 15 years. We collect a bunch of stuff that and when we don't have time to go through and sort through it, it's so hard to do that. So it's
Mhm.
like this forced me to release, and I believe it was part of my healing process for
Mhm.
sure. He releasing what no longer served me in this space. And also, Trisha, I feel like there was a process where I was learning how to better protect myself. And this is something where I also find this with patients, as we learn to love ourselves more and to say, hey, what do I really want? For the longest time, I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't
Yeah.
know what I wanted in my house. What color do you want the walls? We don't know what we want because we're used to deferring to someone else or doing what someone else thinks. And it's like, no, I get to decide, what colors do I want? What kind of refrigerator do I want? And so through that process, it was like that was also healing too, was choosing
Mhm.
what do I want, but also realizing I had not been doing a good job of protecting myself, right? I didn't protect myself by having a safe shelter. Now I have a safe shelter. How I also learned how to protect myself in my home. Prior to that, my home had been broken into twice, and belonging, jewelry and cash had been taken from my home. And from that, I learned a lesson of, I need to learn better how to protect what's important to me. And we don't learn that either. I don't think, especially as women, we don't learn how to protect ourselves, protect our belongings that are important to us.
We also don't always draw the connection between all the different events. Like if you sat here and you came in and said, "Well, here's the situation. So I was in a narcissistic relationship. I was raised in a narcissistic home, and then I've been robbed a couple times, and then my house caught on fire and the roof fell in, and then I rebuilt it." People would be like, "Oh, wow, that sucks." And nobody would take that and connect that to protection. But it
Yeah.
is all protection
Yeah.
because the narcissism was beating you down to where you weren't looking out for yourself. You weren't standing up for yourself. You weren't speaking up for yourself. You weren't protecting yourself. And the
Yes.
world said, you're not protecting yourself. I'm going to start to do things that grow on you. I'm going to give you every single sign that you need to take a step back and listen. And I think as humans, when we have, I'm going to say the shit hit the fan,
Yes.
we look at it literally. right? My living room kept flooding the last 3, 4 years. Every time it would rain, my living room would flood. And we
Oh,
eventually and people would come in and try to patch it up or whatever. And you can't just patch it up.
no.
You got to go back. You got to figure it out. And I kept saying this, I don't have the money to do this. I can't, how am I supposed to do this? I don't have the money to do this. I'm going to let my house ruin, and I kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And there was a huge lesson when it came to money and freedom of money and trust that I needed to learn.
Mhm.
And I hope I've learned it now. I feel like I've learned it. My living room no longer leaks. It's brand new. It's beautiful. It has a nice fireplace. Yes, it cost a fortune. So be it. But I think if I were to go back and maybe draw that to things in my childhood, I'm sure it's a similar lesson.
Yeah.
And we look at these things and we look at them as an individual event and the circumstances
Yep.
instead of backing up and just
Yep.
saying, okay, what is repetitive to me? I think it was actually JJ Virgin that said to me in January, she said, when you keep seeing the same thing in the same situation over and over again, you need to start to pay attention to that situation,
Yes.
because you're
Exactly.
putting yourself in it. This isn't happening to you. You are creating it.
Yes.
And I went home that day and I was like, well, damn, I am, aren't I? I need to make a shift in that. And
Mhm.
so I think that's a very powerful lesson because all these things you've gone through all came back to you protecting your heart, your soul, and protecting who Donnie is as a
Mhm.
beautiful soul, which you are.
Aw, thank you. Well, and we have to get to that point of valuing ourselves enough to realize we deserve to be protected, right? Like this term of deserving. I was talking to a patient yesterday and she's like, "Hey, I'm saying, how do you feel?" She's like, "I'm feeling happier." And she's like, "But I'm not sure I deserve to feel happier." And I said to her, like I think this deserving is like a construct of humans created as an illusion or a delusion that somehow we're supposed to deserve it. Just being here, we already can choose to be happy. We don't have to meet any qualifications. And so
Yeah.
I said to her, how about we just go online and get a certificate and say you now have permission to feel happy, and we'll print it out and frame it and put it on your wall. Because
Right there.
sometimes we do kind of need to give ourselves the permission to be important, to be protected, to be happy, to be right, because we feel like we're supposed to have permission. And so I'm like, well, then let's just give ourselves that permission, because
Mhm.
ultimately we do already have the permission. We just don't realize it.
Yeah, and we're being told and stimulated from all over the place and seeing doom and gloom. And we think, well, if this other person is not doing well, I don't deserve to do well. And it's all an illusion
Yeah.
because every single moment of our lives, we make a choice. And we're going to have moments where we're sad and we're going to have moments where we're angry and we're frustrated and we feel like crap. But we also can use that as a learning experience to change it into something positive. And you have been a great example of that and a great guest to talk about so many different things in such a short period of time. So,
I'm so glad. Yay.
so now that you've found and you've returned yourself to Donnie and you are serving you, what are you doing next?
Nah, thank you. Well, I decided to go more into learning psychedelic medicine. And
Mhm.
so I've spent the past year completing actually a certification. It's the Integrative Psychiatry Institute in psychedelic assisted therapy, because I see how much the psychedelics helped me heal. And I
Yeah.
see how many people are suffering, yes, from narcissism, but also from anxiety, depression, post traumatic stress disorder,
Mhm.
all of these factors, even pain disorders. And
Mhm.
they're often not getting helped by the standard of care. And so I'm really an advocate now for the potential use of psychedelic therapy. Of course, we always have to see, is this the right thing for this
Yeah.
person? And part of the training is knowing, when is it right? What form of psychedelic therapy is right for this person? How to help support them through it so they can get the most benefit, how to do the integration and the support. But I'm really excited now, as having my experience and now having this training, professional
Mhm.
training. I'm really hopeful for the future for humans who are needing help with emotional and physical pain, that psychedelics can be an option for them. And I'm hopeful that it's going to become more and more available, because right now in the United States, it's there's very little availability, legal availability, but it's growing. It's changing. For example, now psilocybin is being certified, or has been certified for use in Oregon and Colorado, and they just passed legislation in Iowa. Psilocybin is from magic mushrooms, so it's from mushrooms, psychedelic plant medicine,
Mhm.
and there's ketamine, which is really a dissociative anesthetic, but it's more and more available through clinics around the United States. And
Mhm.
so these to me are tools that, although at first we feel afraid of, right? Because we are told,
Well,
oh,
because we think
wrong.
about it being like a recreational scenario where we're set on our own to figure it out, but that's not. I mean, this is like therapy. It's like you go to therapy and you work through things. You have to do that in conjunction, and you have to. Anyone
Yes.
listening, you have to use a skilled provider for this.
Yes.
Please don't do this on your own. It will not work. I promise you. You've got to do it with somebody such as Dr. Donnie or otherwise, right? Because this is a
Yes.
whole comprehensive plan, and the medicine you use, like you were saying, is specific to what you're trying to do too. It's not always the same one for everyone, or the same dose,
Yes.
or the same process, correct?
Exactly. And so we need to know your case, and you want to have a provider who can support you, prepare you, help you
Mm-hmm.
during and after, because that's what the research shows is the most
Mm-hmm.
beneficial, is not just the substance use, but
Right.
the whole process. And I think a lot of people are afraid because for so many years, right, we grew up during the war on drugs, and we were told these are drugs, and yet these are substances that are not addictive. I mean,
Yeah.
ketamine has a very slight addictive profile, but like psilocybin and
Mm-hmm.
ayahuasca, they're not addictive substances actually. And so they were categorized as Schedule 1 because of the fear. But really, when we look at the research, there's so much potential benefit that there has to be a way we can safely use them, because right now there's drugs that are available that have addictive qualities and much higher risk profile that are available.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to re-look at this and say, how are we really deciding what should be available for humans to help them heal and
Yeah.
recover from trauma? And so I'm very hopeful that that's going to be the case, and welcome anyone who is wanting to know more to reach out to me, because that's what I'm doing now, Tricia, is
That's
I'm like
awesome.
thinking, okay, what does that look like for me to be able to continue helping people to recover from stress and trauma
Mm-hmm.
using potential of plant medicine, and using my experience with narcissistic abuse. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times when people come through abuse, we don't talk about it. And that
Mm-hmm.
also, again, like we started with, it perpetuates it when we don't talk about it. And so that's why I'm so glad to be here today saying, I want to talk about this and say, this
Right.
is what I experienced. And I know there's so many women as well as men experiencing
Mm-hmm.
narcissistic abuse right
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily there's more and more awareness and information about it. But I want people to know that it's possible to recover and break the cycle. So because otherwise
Amen.
you can feel like you're stuck and there's no end in sight. And I want you to
Yep.
know there is a way out.
There's always a solution, and our bodies will always attempt to heal if we give them the right circumstances. And so don't lose hope. Reach out to someone that helps you find it. I know the doctor shopping and finding people that can help can get so frustrated, and being medications that are definitely addictive that were being handed out on prescription. I mean, there's so many different options, and you have been such a joy to have on the show. And thank you so much for being so vulnerable and open about what you went through, because like you said, most people don't talk about it. So I really, really appreciate you. Is it at Dr. Donnie Wilson? Is that where they
Yeah,
find it?
my website is you spell it out. So DOCTORDONI. Donnie is spelled DONI.com. And you can find me there, and find also my podcast, How Humans Heal, which I'd
Yeah.
love to have you come chat with me there soon.
Absolutely. Tell me when. I'll be there. I'll show
Okay.
up.
Let's do it. Very
Yay.
good.
Well, good. Thank you so much, my dear. So lovely to see you. And we'll talk soon.
Okay. See you soon.